Do you know what I'm talking about? Like pitch black, dark. My favorite story about this is I worked at a camp for a long time in Tennessee. 6 years I spent there. One of my tasks there was I was in charge of the night watch. Like that was my responsibility to make sure that it was fully covered. Why would you need to have a night watch? Well, there was about 2,000 campers that came there every week, and so you need to be prepared for that because anything could happen. And so as a result of this, I would have to recruit and train people on how to walk around and make sure there weren't teenagers slipping out of their cabins and going and doing things they shouldn't be doing, okay? And so our job was to do this. Well, on the property of that camp where I worked, they have a graveyard. And the founder of the camp was buried there, and all of his family, along with some other people, had been buried there. Plus, there was also an old pioneer camp or graveyard right there too. So there was like old stones that were there marking graves, and so they had just added on to this. And so one of the areas we had to check was the graveyard. It's an absolutely beautiful place to go. You would walk up there during the day. Beautiful flowers. The trees were gorgeous. They grew up. This path was really long. Probably the distance about, if you were to start at the entrance right here by the stoplight and walk to the other side of the pond, was the pathway to get there, okay? It was paved, it was well paved. The trees had all grown up and grown over the top of the pathway, and they were kind of like interwoven there, so it made this really cool looking tunnel during the daytime. There were no lights in that graveyard. None. Absolutely zero lights. And so part of our duty was we had to go up there and check it at night because, well, you couldn't have a couple of people slip up there. They could do a whole lot of stupid stuff, and so we had to keep a regular check on it. And so we would go and walk up there, and I was always thankful for my flashlight because it helped me to see. And of course, you hear all the noises of nature when you're out there, and there's rattlesnakes in that part of Tennessee, and there's all kinds of cool things, and so you would walk out there and check it. Well, part of what we would do for a little bit of fun is I would try to psych out the guys. Like, you could never make it all the way down the pathway into the graveyard without your flashlight. Like, there's no way you could do it. You are not man enough. That's what I used to say. You are not man enough to do it. And they'd be like, can you do it? And I'd say, yeah, absolutely I can. And I would do it, and I would walk down there and cry the whole way. But I would do it, and so then I would challenge them to try to do this, okay? And so they would start off, we would take their flashlight, and we would set it at the end of the road, and we'd say, when you come back for it, we'll determine whether or not you were man enough, all right? And so they would take off. Well, what would happen is my friend would set up that part of it, and I would go about halfway down the path, and I would hide in amongst the tree line, and I would just wait. And I would wait. And they would come down, and of course walking, you know how you walk when it's pitch dark? How many of you like are feeling in front of you, and like you're kind of like really unsure and really like, just like zoom down, okay? And so they would come down, and sure enough, I could see by looking back through the tunnel of trees, the light on the other end, I could see their silhouette coming. And so here's what I would do. As soon as they would get to about as far as Mr. Humus from me, I would just step out in the middle of the pathway and stand there. And I wouldn't say a word, I wouldn't make a noise, and then I would let them walk into me. And most of the time they bounced off and fell on the ground, and then we'd pick them back up, and they would be screaming. Some of them ran out of there screaming. Others of them were wanting to knuckle up with whatever was there, and they wanted to fight. But here's the whole thing. When you have light in a situation like that, like if I would have stood there, I probably should have done this. Stood there, and as soon as they got right to me, just boom, hit my flashlight in their face. Like, the light sticks out in the darkness. That's why we want to use it, all right? When we go camping this time, I hope that it'll be pitch black dark where we are, and we can scare people, but the reality is this. We want to have light. How many of you, when you go to your house, and you get up in the middle of the night to go to the restroom, you flip on lights on your way to the restroom, or you take some sort of lighted device with you? Be honest. All right, why? Because the second you forget to turn on the light, there's going to be a bad guy hiding around the corner, and he's going to jump the boogeyman, right?
Or
he's going to get you.
Hurt your foot.
Huh?
Or he's going to stub your toe.
Yeah, right. Well, I was always scared of him coming out from under the bed, so I used to always jump from like 4 feet away from the bed into the bed so that he couldn't grab me. But anyhow, light and darkness sticks out. Like, it should be so obviously different than everything around it. Well, we're called to be the light. We're called to be representing Christ so much so that people can't help but see us. You've been driving and you come up on a city that's way off in the distance and you can just see the glow. Maybe Chicago, like you're going to a real town and you can just see the glow of Chicago. Lafayette, you can see Lafayette when you get to Lafayette. But you could see this glow, right? It sticks out. Well, that's how we're supposed to be. So, how? What does it mean for us to let our light shine before men? What does that mean? It sounds like a nice phrase, right? We could make a little song, "This Little Light of Mine," right? We could sing that, "Shine All Over Lafayette." We could do that. But what does it really mean to be the light? Someone explain it to me. More than just the illustration of it.
Well, our goal as believers is to become more like Christ. And Christ is God's Messiah, and He is God. And one person with God is light, and when God is love, He's the light of the world. And if we're supposed to be like Him, if our aim is to be like Him, we will stick out and be different because no one else has ever been like Him. No one else ever will be like Him. And that's how He created us to be, and our sin, our darkness overtook that. So for us to be a light is to be completely the polar opposite of the world. A completely different motivation for living and for what we do than anybody else.
Okay. Anybody else? That was a pretty thorough answer, right? It's our duty to reflect the glory of God. And it should be so obvious that people see a difference. So let me ask you this then. How does our community see our light? Like, couldn't you just go about your task of reflecting the glory of God in your house? Like, how does your community see the light? Like, how do they see it?
Just like, since that's how we're supposed to be different, I guess the stereotypical answer is, like, teens don't get up till like 12 o'clock, and then when they do that, they just play video games or just go back to sleep. So, like, when we're out picking up trash just around town, people see that and see that we're doing it, well, we should be doing it, happy, joyful spirits. They kind of see that we are different and like engaging them in a conversation. We actually care about talking to them, and then like bringing in the gospel and see how different we are from other teenagers.
Okay. What else? Even take it out of the teenager realm. I mean, most people don't give the majority of their time to serving others. Luke?
He hit on a part of it. To be a light is to be active. Like, you can say, well, I'm not contributing to the darkness, and so somehow that's being good. But not being darkness is not equal to being the light. Like, you have to be active and pursuing people who are in the darkness in order to save them.
Okay. Good.
Go. You have to go and do something there. Not too much of the community is going to be in your house seeing you live your daily Christian life. You have to go out into the community and do your good works so that then they give glory to God the Father.
Very good. Guys, you will be surprised at the number of times people will say something to you while you're serving in the community, like, "Why are you doing this? This is awesome." I don't often see a group of kids who want to do this sort of thing. On Friday, we were out mowing grass, and this lady was standing across the street, very obviously standing in her front doorway watching us. And I mean, just kind of staring at us the whole time we were mowing. It was kind of getting creepy, It was kind of like, dude, like, stop looking at me, one of those, like, you kind of, part of me wanted to turn around, like, pick my nose just so it'd be awkward, and then she would turn around. But she was, like, staring at me, and so, like, what in the world is going on? And so we got all done, and we're loading up the trailer and getting ready to leave. This was before the truck broke down. And so we're getting ready to leave, and she walks across the street, and she says this: "Are you guys that youth group that I heard about that goes around mowing lawns for people who can't mow their lawns?" And we're like, "Yeah, that's us. That's absolutely us." And she's like, "That is the coolest thing ever." And I just asked her, "How did you hear about us?" You know how she heard about us? The neighbors were talking about it. Now, when we first started, like mowing lawns, I never thought this lady would come out and talk to us, but like people understand and realize there's something different. Why would people do this? It makes no sense. And then she gave us a few names of people that need their weeds pulled and things like that. But the reality is this. People are going to notice when you're serving. There's enough Christians who talk. We need more Christians who do. That's what we need. So, you can be the brightest light in your house, and that's good, you should be. But get out and impact those around you. Impact those around you. So how do we determine who our community is? Like, how do we determine who we're supposed to be reaching out to? Let's just review this story quickly. Luke 10:25 through 37. Just then an expert in the law stood up to test him, saying, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And he said this, "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." "You've answered correctly," he told them. "Do this and you will live." But wanting to justify himself, he asked of Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Jesus took up the question and said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers, and they stripped him, and they beat him up and fled, leaving him half dead. And a priest happened to be going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. And in the same way, a Levite, when he arrived at the place, saw him pass by on the other side. But a Samaritan on his journey came up to him, and when he saw the man, he had compassion. And he went over to him and bandaged his wounds and poured olive oil and wine. Then he put him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper and said, 'Take care of him, and when I come back I'll reimburse you for whatever extra you spend.' Which of these 3 do you think proved to be the neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers?" "The one who showed mercy to him," he said. Then Jesus told him, "Go and do the same." I want you to just think about this for a second. If we're called to shine our light in our community, how do we determine who we should be ministering to? Like, how do we determine who we should be reaching out to? I want you to talk about in your group this. How many people walked by this guy while he was laying there? And what were their jobs? Yet, who was the person who ended up truly caring about him? And who should we be seeking, if we're following that example, who should we be seeking to minister to? All right, talk about that in your group. Go ahead.